Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Thanks for tuning in to another weekly Wednesday live stream. We aim to do these every Wednesday at noon live, which gives you the opportunity to chime in and be part of the show. Ask your questions, post comments, and let's have at it. If you've got questions, it looks like we've got one already. Thank you, Sovereign Pros, for sharing this out, which reminds me, actually, please do share this out to your network either now live. Let's see if we can get some more people into this chat, or after, share out the video that we will release. I do minor editing. I like to take out the intro as a side note. Hopefully you got the intro music because I like that intro music. For some reason, I'm not getting it over my headset today, which I normally do. So it sounded quiet to me. Intro music or not, we're off to the races now with another weekly Wednesday live stream. We are live on Rumble, X, YouTube, Facebook, and Substack. Substack, I've learned that we should be able to go live with Substack and use the actual green screen. So those of you who tune in on Substack, if you're a first-time visitor, Substack actually works a little bit differently. I have a different configuration, microphone, and setup. So you may hear me reference, today I'm not going to use it, but sometimes I use that green screen, which you can see behind me. On Substack, for the moment, you can't actually see what I'm projecting in the green screen, which for my Substack audience currently is just simply an American flag, showing where my heart is. The purpose and intention of UnWoke.Academy is we're where follow the money meets freedom economy. We want to track down and talk about the woke on Wall Street. Where are the bad guys getting their money from to do bad things and harm to those of us who care about the Western values in America? Well, you've heard me say it before and I'm going to keep saying it. Some of the money comes from the abuse of American taxpayers. So we've seen stuff like the information that came out of the Doge efforts in Washington, D.C. recently, and I still hold out hope that some people follow through and push back and scale back the abuse of the American taxpayer. Well, that's only part of the equation. Wall Street is another part. In short, and I could get back into the weeds easily because I've been talking about this for years, that a lot of the money managers, that means things like mutual funds, they drank the Kool-Aid and they went woke, which means trillions of dollars of our hard-earned money that sits in things like IRA accounts and 401k that gets diverted into the very things that we oppose, that harm us and destroy the West and Western values. Specifically, not to put too fine a point on it, we did an interview with Justin Bernier early last year, 2024. Justin Bernier is one of the creators of the National Security Index, which tracked and reported to Congress. Actually, let me be clearer about my statement. Justin and his group were a part of a number of people who put together something called the CPA report, which was presented to Congress. And it showed that companies like BlackRock were using offshore managers to funnel money via those offshore managers and around embargoes and directly fund the growth and expansion of the Chinese Communist Party's military. That should be frightening to all. If you're saving up and taking a little bit out of your paycheck to put into an IRA or 401k or something, well, first of all, first thing to know is that from a tax sheltered savings standpoint, those are smart accounts to have. But what it gets invested in is another animal. That's another part of the equation entirely. It should be funding growing free market economy. If you're at all like me, you'd like to see American economy and ingenuity blossoming again. Well, in order to do that, it needs funding. And that's what our capital markets were designed for. They've become captive to the far left. So a lot of, and we see it in things like the S&P 500 with this over consolidation with too few companies getting too much money. The opposite of that is getting back to capitalism, back to free market. Capitalism is what created America's middle class and gave us the freedoms that we've enjoyed for generations. Let's get back to it, I say. That's the purpose and intention of UnWoke Academy. Well, a couple of really interesting things have happened since I last hopped on and presented a live stream discussion. By the way, that is your cue. If you are tuned in, not only should you share this out to your group, and let's see if we can get some more people into the conversation, because more of us need to be talking about this stuff. But also, if you have thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns, if you post them on whatever platform you're watching this on, I should see them. I'm watching two different feeds right now, and I should be able to see any comments or questions you ask. And I will do my best to incorporate those into the discussion. Let's get your questions answered. I have people on a pretty regular basis who ask, is my 401k plan woke? Is my state funding woke stuff if I'm in the Public Employees Retirement System, PERS for short? Those are great questions. More of us need to be asking them because what we fund becomes the future that the next generation inherits. What do you want to give to your children or grandchildren? Or if you don't have kids, what do you think the next generation should inherit? Should it be 6 or 8 companies controlled by about 12 billionaires that control everything from food and water and distribution and supply chain to medicine to publishing to web content, you name it? That's the direction that we were headed under Joe Biden. And people saw it. People like me are fighting back against BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and companies like them that have mass consolidated and captured huge markets. We should have free markets where your neighbor or you or your kid or your brother-in-law could start a business and maybe grow that into the next big thing. Right now, we struggle to create an environment where small business can thrive. But I think that's reversing. And there's really good indication that that's reversing via the private membership association. So we're hovering it right now about 50% return. If you've been following what that means is one of the people who came into the private membership association, we actually tracked some trades that were made in her account. I actually personally was involved on October 8th of 2024. Through current, it actually peaked out a little above 60% return and now is about 50%. So half again the amount of money that was put into that account. And what we did there is just applied the the research that we've done at UnWoke.Academy. And the research and the hope, the objective, the intention of today's capital markets is to go back to capital markets, to take some of the money away from those 30-ish companies that received way too much money, that were suffocating a free market economy. They were really literally collapsing the ability of their competitors' ability to compete with them and maybe one day overtake them. And you know the usual suspects. It was Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, you name it. By the way, I'm not giving investment advice per se in this discussion. Really, what I'm sharing is the thought process and methodology and some things that you may want to be aware of and alert for if you're not the woke type. If you're not woke and you're worried about these things like the DEI that gets pumped in, which is just critical race theory and racism pumped into corporations, if you're worried about things like this fake ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which we've yet to see anybody actually define, that gave excuses for funneling money into funding too few companies. If you don't like that stuff, then should be make a point of listening to this show, because over time I'm going to make you aware of what the better options are and what that whole landscape looks like. So I talk a lot about my decades of experience on Wall Street. Yes, I am ex Wall Street. I left. I will give you, I'll share with you the Cliff's Notes version. Earlier today, I was on the phone with a friend and talking about this, and I put it in the following context because I think you may want to know. I made it onto Wall Street. I have a particular skill set and I have the right sort of ingredients that propelled me very successfully in a realm of finance. And effectively, I've been told this, and I believe it to be true. I have a very technical mind. I can absorb large amounts of detail and with great specificity, but I'm also a fairly good communicator. I'm told, I believe, I hope. You can tell me if you believe otherwise. But those two ingredients, being able to manage a high degree of information in a very technical arena, but also being able to communicate with people well, that set me on a trajectory. Many of the people that I was involved with and around were very, very wealthy and becoming much more wealthy. These are the types of people that had an extra condo because sometimes they didn't like having to drive out of the city. They had private flights. They would fly everywhere. I saw a lot of that in loges to sporting games and sit on the floor at basketball games, whatever. Many of them would talk regularly about looking at another home in Miami or buying one in the coast in New Jersey and New York or LA or whatever. So that's an arena. It's an environment where I get to see firsthand how alluring that is. To be able to go and stay in the highest high-end five-star luxury hotels and eat exotic meals and fly and travel and just the amount of money that stands to be made is breathtaking. But I didn't stay there very long before I realized that I can't sell my soul. I'm not that type of person. I don't have the ability to ignore morality, and I saw the harm that befalls. So it really is, in my estimation, and the reason that I walked away and left, it 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 damages people, it harms, it robs people, it's destructive, and that's how that amount of money is made. Um, so I left the where we are now with UnWoke.Academy. A couple of things all at once. One is, if you're able to, we'd love your support. We rely on contributors and support that can look like anything. If you can't support us financially, that's okay. Please do follow us and share the content. If you can, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. That is the business model that we've moved to, in short, because starting some years ago, as I started to sling some arrows against BlackRock, that actually started with a letter that I wrote in 2007, calling out BlackRock and some of the behaviors of Wall Street. Um, I set myself out as an outlier and not following the narrative, and that's okay. I decided that that's my role. I can't, I cannot either, in good faith and good conscience, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I did the same sorts of things that harm and are destructive to people. It's not a path I'm willing to follow. So for that reason, we've built a business model around UnWoke that largely relies on contributor support. So if you can support us financially, it helps us to put out great content like those market minutes that I do, and this live stream has a related note talking about Substack. I believe, if I understand correctly, that will actually be an upgrade in the subscription service that we use to do this live stream. I will gladly bite the bullet on that. That's another expense. But ultimately, it does take a fair amount of money to put all this together in a meaningful way, to do the research, to generate the reports, and then get them out to you. So your two roles, potentially, and you can pick and choose, are watching, taking it to heart, implementing the things that we talk about, sharing it, and if you can, support us financially. So that's where we are. But here's the crazy thing that's happened since the last time I hopped on and broadcast. I was approached with the prospect of becoming a local radio show host. And just to set the stage a little bit, because I think it's pretty amazing and incredible the way things played out. I've periodically been a guest on a local radio program that's been hosted by a man by the name of Bob Frantz, Frantz. Bob Frantz in my neck of the woods is very well known. He's a very successful 11-year radio personality. He has filled in for Larry Elder, Dennis Prager, uh, a number of other conservatives, Sebastian Gorka, and he has become a national figure. He's a great radio personality. And I've been a guest on his program a few times. We've gotten to know each other. In the lead up to December, a couple of weeks ago, uh, starting about a month ago, I was presented with the prospect of becoming a radio show host on another radio program, not the same station, and a little smaller footprint. And I ended up taking the offer, and I am now. I have been since December 2nd. I'm a broadcast host, and I talk about all sorts of local issues. Well, the day before I was slated to go live on December 2nd, the day before, on December 1st, surprisingly, Bob Frantz was kicked off the air. Is a very successful program. It was making, I understand, a lot of money. Never did, according to his words, and you can watch the interview that I did, or the release of video that he has done, and the audio from today's radio program. There was never any corrective action. Nobody apparently ever said to him, hey, you need to rein that in, or we don't like what you said. So it came as a complete shock and kind of a gut punch to the region and really ultimately the nation. My takeaway, and Bob Frantz actually says this on his video, that ultimately he has a very listened to conservative voice. And the fear, the concern, the suspicion leading up to the midterm elections is that there are some very powerful powers that be that don't want the conservative element of the United States to have a voice. They don't want people to be able to have a loud, very vocal, very visible platform to advocate for conservative values and principles. I believe that that's why Bob Frantz was kicked off the air. Well, how wild is it that after 11 years, he was kicked off the air the day before I was to go live? Well, flash forward, and this morning he was a guest of mine on my program, which was an honor. And I'm really pinching myself to think that I've gone from, I never imagined being a radio show host because I'm that sort of nerdy element in a niche within finance that for most of my career, most of what I did wasn't even all that visible. I would sometimes go into a boardroom and I would present to the boards of whatever it was. I was present to the board about the elements that I covered. And that was kind of it. To move from that to doing this podcast and this live stream, and then have the radio show and host somebody like Bob France, I just think is a pretty wild fact set. Ultimately, it's up to people like Bob France and like me to step forward and become as vocal as possible because we see things. We want better for our nation. We see the problems and we want to help people get their head around the issues and the solutions because ultimately that's key. We need the information. I'm hoping, of course, that I don't get further deplatformed. I am throttled on YouTube. I get these dings all the time because I host people that talk about issues that YouTube then, of course, screens and then flags me. And you're probably not going to see me in YouTube feed. I'm throttled on Facebook, but that's what it is. So be it. It's up to me to use the knowledge and connections and skills that I have to get vocal, to get loud, and it's up to you, the listening audience, to take that and run with it where you will. Get the information that I have into the hands of the right people, and that could mean anything. It could mean having somebody else in your family or a trusted friend who also works in finance and get the unwoke information to them and ask the hard questions. Ask, what am I funding with the money that's in my accounts? We'd love to have you at the financial PMA. Love to have you join as a member. That's an option, but that's just simply an upgrade option. That's your choice if you choose or you don't have better outlets, better avenues. You can use the things that I've done, the research, the reporting, use it all to the best of your ability and good health. That if you know the people who run the company that you work for, the key decision makers, let's talk to them about where the pools of money are sitting. If those, for instance, your 401k, that's my primary expertise. That's where I've worked. I have a background in plan administration, starting back around the, well, it was a couple of decades ago. I'll put it that way. I got my start in working as a national director for it's called a third-party administrator. Let's talk about the options that are given inside of that plan to you and your colleagues. Because if you're part of that roughly $13 trillion that's in 401k plans, why let it default to BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and others that I've clearly shown they don't care. They will take your money and put it into the very things that harm us. That's a report that I've done at great length. There are alternatives. There are better options. By the way, I'm not connected to any of those. I'm not talking about replacing product or investment option with my investment option. That's not what this looks like. There are other ways of investing that you and your colleague can do that has nothing to do with any product. I don't make any extra money off of it. That's not what this is about. This is about saving our nation. We have to do a better job of putting our money where our mouth is. And when we talk about freedom economy, we need to fund that. And there are all kinds of potential, wonderful, beautiful options and opportunities out there. If you're not already aware, on February 21st of this year, Donald Trump issued the America First investment policy. That is instructing finance and capital markets to shape up and behave better and do the very things that I'm talking about. It's a thing of beauty. In my book, it's one of the most important things that Donald Trump has done in his political career. We need to take those things and discuss what it looks like and how we implement that stuff. Because if we have a whole nation full of, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'll ballpark, there's about $46 trillion in retirement plans, all of them combined. IRA, what are called 457 and 403B, and all of them, 401k, all combined $46 trillion or thereabouts. And around 13 trillion of that is in things like 401k. If we allow that stuff to just take the path of least resistance and Wall Street all decides that everybody needs to be effectively in virtually identical funds that are funding a virtually identical basket of around 30-ish companies, and they're all overfunded. And if many of them represent, for lack of a better term for it, global communism, because they're taking control over way too much. Remember back in the day when we used to talk about monopolies and using our government to break up monopolies? Well, these are beyond monopoly. These are global oligarchies. We shouldn't want that. We shouldn't want to fund it. And even if you like, pick one, don't continue to overfund it. Even if just taking a little bit of what you are saving in your 401k or whatever, take a little bit of that money and give opportunity to other companies that might compete in the future and become some great thing in the future. Or let's say, for instance, you're one of those people that's concerned about the behaviors of pharmacy companies. Chances are pretty good if you just default into whatever run-of-the-mill mutual funds that some run-of-the-mill plan broker wants to put in your 401k plan, you're probably funding big pharma. You may not like that. So this is all about asking those questions. You need to be asking those questions. And I'm proactively, actually, maybe you don't need to be asking those questions because I'm proactively asking them on your behalf and posting videos about them so that you can know. Like I covered Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and Merck, and a whole bunch of other ones, and showed you where you can find them. And there's a step-by-step, super easy way of looking at the investments that you have to see if a bunch of that stuff is lurking in there. And along the way, I've shown some ways to significantly shave off massive amounts of the fees that are typically associated with those. This is a side note, but it's important, and I'm going to keep pushing on it. I have done some market analysis and looked at, and I've got ballpark figures for the entire nation of the United States. We have around $13 trillion in 401k plans. Plan brokers sell those plans, and they act as a plan advisor. That's a common term. The plan advisor on those 401k plans usually gets some percentage of all the money that's in there on a regular basis. So every year, they're subtracting money out of everybody's account, just subtracting. Out it goes on a regular basis. I did some ballpark math on that and created some averages. On average, according to my calculations, and you can find it on UnWoke.Academy, you can retrace my steps and see the math and how I arrived at it. On average, it's $399.18 per person all across the nation, subtracted every year. It doesn't have to come out. And just using that number, let's assume that instead of subtracting out the $399.18, the money stays in your account. If it does, and it grows at 7% for the average duration, for average work life of around 30 years, I think we came up with $47,000. That's $47,000 difference for American workers for doing nothing different. I'm not even talking in this segment in this moment, I'm not even talking about what you're invested in. Let's assume that nothing changes. If nothing changes and you stay invested exactly as you are, if you get a 7% rate of return over those 30 years, you're missing out on around $47,000 based on that math. So there's a better way there. Also, I get into different ways that you can invest that eliminate the management fee. So mutual funds typically have a fee attached to somebody running an algorithm or managing that money for you. That ends up being kind of a triple negative. You've got the added layer of a plan advisor or broker or somebody. You've got the layer of paying the mutual fund expense. If you're a technical type like me, it's referred to as an expense ratio. And then you probably have mutual funds that have way more overlap and are doing the same things and investing the same ways under different labels. So that's just a lose, lose, lose all the way around if you're funding a bunch of the far left woke. It's a better option in building investment portfolios that you can see, that eliminate many of those layers of management fees, strip out a lot of that cost. I've done episodes on that. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. You can see Behind the Veil is a 3-part episode or 3-part series that I did on 401k plans. And routinely, I talk about what are called self-directed brokerage accounts. It's a little breadcrumb. You should do some research into that and try and get it added where you work. That's my area of expertise. I'm just going to keep sharing this stuff out and hoping that people run with it or call me or message me. You can reach me at Jonathan@UnWoke.Investing.com. That's Jonathan with an A, Jonathan at UnWoke.Investing.com with any questions. I'll try my best to get to everybody, get answers, and we can do all the things that need to be done here. How woke is my fund? I've done that before for a lot of people. I've done deep dive analysis into people that have a lot of different mutual funds and look at statements that look like they have an array of good investments and are properly diversified. That's a term that simply means you're invested in lots of different types of things. Well, we've found many times that people are not nearly as diversified as they think they are. There are a lot of different funds with a lot of different names that ultimately ended up investing in very, very similar investments. But why do that? And why pay for it? And sometimes you're paying for it twice. You have a plan advisor, then the investment management fee, and then the woke stuff that you end up in. There are better alternatives, and we talk about that in great detail. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in today's live stream. Please do remember to share this out, get other people talking about it, engage in the conversation. Actually, no, there's another element that I want to introduce. When it comes to the people out there who want to get involved, they want to find better answers. They're concerned about where our country is headed, because I get that type as well. There are plenty of people who want somebody to come along and find a better answer and just point them in a better direction. And I understand that. Life's busy. Life's full, life's busy, life's complicated. The following comments are for the type of person who asks, I'm fed up, I'm frustrated, what can I be doing to fight back? Fist in the air, fight, fight, fight. Remember that? There are a lot of people that still reference that image of Donald Trump with blood on the side of his face, and he's got his fist in the air and he's shouting for people to fight. If you're that type, look up something called precinct strategy. This is it's unrelated to UnWoke.Academy, but it's something that I hold dear because I've been very involved for years. The website, the book, the podcast, all of it was created by a very good friend of mine, Dan Schultz. Dan Schultz, he didn't reinvent something. He didn't create something out of thin air. He simply took the civics that's often lacking in today's education system and put a name to it. He calls it precinct strategy. And basically, all it is teaching people to get involved at the local level. Well, Dan and I have been teaching the nation for over 2 years now on the social media platform X. On X, there is something called Spaces, which works basically like a giant conference call. And twice a week, Dan and I have been coaching people on precinct strategy. I've deployed it locally where I live. I'm a big advocate, but all it is getting a group of people who care and think in the same way, who want to return to traditional American values, who don't think that we should burn the flag or eliminate our Constitution or crush free speech or tax Second Amendment rights. Those people, if you rally and organize where you live, you can have an impact. In a nutshell, that's precinct strategy. So there's a website, you'll find it, it's precinctstrategy.com. If you're in Ohio, there's another separate website that's called, it's ohioprecinctstrategy.org. Same mission, same objective, just slightly different name. But if you're on X and following me, you may periodically see on Tuesday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern and Friday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern that I'm engaged in that conversation. So, boy, does that spell a full schedule. Every morning, Monday through Friday, I am a voice of Voice of Geauga is our radio program on WINT. You can find it on the web, WINT Radio, for anybody that might be curious about the things that we were talking about in my area of Northeast Ohio. WINT Radio. You're more than welcome to listen in. Love to have listeners and commenters. I am one of the voices of Precinct Strategy, Dan Schultz and I, twice a week. And then the things that I'm doing for UnWoke.Academy. It's a full schedule, but this is what God put in my path. And so I'm picking up the mantle and running with it. I hope that you've enjoyed this live stream. Stay tuned. We will have more episodes upcoming, and periodically I drop those market minutes and then live stream again Wednesday next week. Actually, I need to double check the date. We're getting close to the holiday season. Oh yeah, it's just the 17th. Wednesday the 17th at noon Eastern time. Come back, join the conversation, bring your questions. And again, the email, if you want to contact me offline, is jonathan@unwokeinvesting.com. Share the message and let's fight. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.